Let's get right into it. Let's welcome to the show motivational speaker and domestic violence survivor, Tara Thomas, and author and activist, my man, Kevin Powell. What's up, y'all? How y'all doing?
Hey, how are you?
All
good
good
to
as
see y'all on the show. Everybody looking good. Everybody looking nice. I see Kevin represent the Yankees. The baseball season is back.
Oh yeah, I love my Yankees.
That's the Bronx. That's the Bronx right there. And Tara, you said you're from New York area as well, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. What's going on with you guys? I mean, like everybody's dealing with this this coronavirus, this pandemic in different ways. Give me something positive. Tell me something that has been positive that's come out of this whole pandemic that maybe you've learned about yourself that you can tell the other people, Tara.
Well, since we've been going through the coronavirus, I have gotten a lot closer to my husband. Me being a publicist, I was traveling a lot, so I got to know him a little bit and been spending time with my grandkids and stuff. So it's been good.
All right.
That's a beautiful thing.
I love that. Kev, you got anything? Kev is just chilling like I'm trying to think of
something.
No,
I mean, I'm happy to hear that. And I'm happy to be alive. I'm happy to be able to see my mother and my aunt the other day over in Jersey, where I'm originally from. I've been in New York for 30 years, but even that distance, Jersey to New York, is a lot during this pandemic. And still trying to do the work is important in our communities because there's so much happening. Shout out to the essential workers that are still holding it down. We're still moving forward. I'm so glad we're having this conversation tonight because it's important. I think I forgot to mention to your producer that I'm also working on a documentary film about Black manhood. So that's important to my first directing piece. And so I'm so glad that we're here with Ms. Thomas and really be able to talk about some stuff in an honest way, because I think it's important for us as men to listen, I'm saying, to women.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very big fan of yours and yours as well, Sarah. And thank you for sharing your stories as a domestic violence survivor. I was telling you about my mom and her crusade and what she's gone through her life. When I was a child, my first memory as a child, Donny, was seeing my mom being beaten by my biological father. And that will always stick with me for the rest of my life. So this is something that is really heavy for me. So unfortunately, during this whole pandemic and quarantine, we see spikes in domestic violence cases because people are in the houses together a little bit more. And obviously everybody's under a lot of stress, Tara.
Yeah.
Why is that, Tara?
I think people are under a lot of stress now during the pandemic because they're forced to be with each other. You know what I mean? Like, I'm forced to cook for you, or I'm forced to do certain things. I got to watch this show. If two people don't know each other and then they're forced in a situation where they have to be together, it can sometimes become a problem. And there could be other women, you know what I mean? Like other men. So then I can't go see him or he can't go see her because I got to stay in here with you. And that escalates things sometimes, it's bad. Abuse is just something that it's not easy to get out of. I think once you become a victim of it, it's always a part of you, in some type of way. You have certain triggers.
Hey, Tara, you know what's crazy? I've been hearing this a lot since the COVID been going on. Like, the mates, the couples really don't even know each other. It's been crazy to me. Like every time somebody come on, they say, "Oh, it's hard sitting here, but this person is hard sitting." How the hell y'all get married? How did y'all get to be together? I don't get that. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not gonna be with nobody if I don't like them. That's crazy to me. You feel me?
It's sex. Because when people meet, listen, I'm telling you, it's sex. Because I could like you. And the sex is good, but I'm gonna leave you. I don't have to be with you all the time. So every time I see you, it's the good, right? But when we're forced to be together, you got to take the good, the shit that ain't that good. It's true though, right?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
It's a difference in dating somebody and then having to live with them, and then it's another difference when you actually force to live with them. But that adds to that stress, bro.
But you know what's crazy, Kev? That's how men we think. So now we see women, y'all think the same way now, huh?
You be like, I'm getting ready to get that thing, get it popping. I still got to be with this dude. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like your significant other or boyfriend or girlfriend's got to get up and go home. We live together. So after that, you're like, shit, How can I get rid of him? You know what I mean? But yeah, that's what happened.
It's interesting. You all asked me how any words. I mean, I just announced a couple weeks ago on social media that I'm literally just got divorced in the middle of this pandemic, which has not been easy. I'm not going to get into all of it, but one of the things I think about a lot, something you said, Brother Harrell, is it Harrell?
Donny, Donny Harrell, yeah, bro.
Yes, Mr. Harrell is, I mean, I actually think, if we're honest about it, those of us who are lucky enough to have parents that are still together, that's a blessing. I'm talking about Black folks specifically for a second. And just people in general, because of all races, 50% of the marriages in this country end up in divorce, and you hit it on the head, Brother Donny. A lot of us don't even know each other. We're not friends with people that we partner with. And it's not like we're given a blueprint on how to be a man, how to be a woman, or whatever our gender identity is, and how to be in a relationship or partnership. So a lot of times we're just kind of figuring it out as we go along. And, and I think if we're honest about it, that's also how we get to this conversation about domestic violence, because, most of us have no clue what it is to be a man, other than violence, which this country was founded on. I think about, I was an A student, K through 12. Everything was about men, specifically white men, who were conquerors, dominating, violent. Of course, they left out slavery as much as possible. We never talk about the catastrophic effect of slavery on Black men, on Black women, on Black people, how that affected our relationships, even coming out of slavery. When you talk Brother Hill, about seeing what your father did to your mother, well, that's the same thing that the slave master and overseer did to us, And it's not like there was a mass therapy session when physical slavery ended in 1865. We were just like, well, y'all free and gone, do what you got to do. And so I believe a lot of those traumas have been passed along from generation to generation. One of the most important films that has ever come out about that is called No, exclamation point, by a sister named Aisha Shahida Simmons. She talks about the history of rape of Black women, and she makes it a point to talk about the devastating effects of slavery. It's not just about blaming Black men. It's like, here's the whole context of what has happened to us, which leads to things like me pushing a girlfriend in 1991 to a bathroom door, what has happened to Miss Thomas in her lifetime as a survivor, what happened to you, your mother, Brother Hill, you witnessing that. And, we don't talk about it. And so we never heal because we don't talk about it, which is why this show and this conversation is important. Because I think it's all connected: relationships, marriage, how we view it. Do we view it as a transaction, what I'm saying, or is it real love? And do we actually even know what love is? Do we love ourselves?
You hit it on it when it comes to that. You talk about the other pandemic that we got going on right now is racism. Racism is not something that you're born with. It's something that you're taught. It's something what you see in a household. You see your mom, your daddy, and you start to emulate it.
Yes,
but unfortunately for me, seeing my mom being abused, I don't know where it came in, but maybe it was innate that I was like, you know what? I don't want that. Like, I don't ever want to put my hands on a woman. But so many kids are not as fortunate as I am, or they grow up thinking that is the norm of how to be a man. And that adds to the toxic masculinity that we're talking about tonight.
That's absolutely right. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Clark. And sometimes growing up in the hood, without a father and letting the streets raise you and seeing all the pimp players and hustlers, you know what I mean? You think you know what you're doing, and you really don't. You really don't know how to treat a woman. You know what I'm saying? Because when I grew up, I was raised by the players and the hustlers and the pimps. You know what I'm saying? So when you're raised by them, how you expect you're gonna treat a Black woman like a queen? You know what I'm saying? Because they teach you something else. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, you're right. And I want to make it clear, it's not just Black men, because what we do in this society is make it seem like Black men are responsible for all the bad behavior. We got someone sitting in the White House right now who is called the President of the United States, who has 5 children by 3 different women, who has a history of being abusive to women. We need to be clear about that. So I think it's a problem. That's a pandemic. This whole thing of toxic manhood is a pandemic. And what you said, Brother Donny, is so honest, because my mother did the best she could. Shout out to single mothers out there. Black women who raise children are incredible. Black women are incredible. My mother, was devastated. And we also got to understand, violence is not just physical violence against women. It's also emotional violence and spiritual violence. My father was at least 12 years older than my mother, got her pregnant. She's a very young woman. I only saw him 2 or 3 times up until the time I was 8 years old. At 8 years old, my mother was on the phone with him, and he actually said to her, "You lied to me. He's not my child. I'm not going to give you a nickel from ever again." That's called abuse as well. That's called sexism as well. That's patriarchy. That's misogyny. It had a devastating effect on my mama. And keep in mind, my mama great school education. She's the smartest person I've ever met in my life, but hard work and everything. But there was no sister circles. There was no healing circles. There was no Oprah, no Ayanna Van Zandt. Like most Black women, she just had to figure it out on her own. And so what she did was what she knew, which was don't be like your daddy. She would say one moment, then the next moment, you just like your daddy. So I'm confused at that point. You know what I'm saying? And Brother Hill, you're one of the blessed ones who saw examples of violence and said, I'm going to go a different direction. Unfortunately, most of us, myself included, we fall into serious anger issues and violence because it's all around us, and that's what we're taught.
We're going to talk about steps to get past that. Maybe it's the mental health aspect of it or whatever. You're going to give us 7 steps a little bit later on in the show. And can an abuser actually change his ways? Because we talked about the Chris Brown situation where somebody said once he hits him, he's going to do it again. We're going to talk about that topic. That's very, very a sensitive topic that we're going to get into here on the Mike and Donny show. It's coming up next. We're talking the effects of domestic violence and toxic masculinity on the Mike and Donny show. I'm Mike Hill. That's Donny Harrell. We are joined by Tara Thomas, who is a domestic violence survivor, and Kevin Powell, a renowned author and also an activist. And Tara, we was talking with a break, and this is, anytime you talk about it, even though it's maybe been years since you gotten past it, this is still a very heavy topic for you. This is something that you really never truly get over.
Right. You need, they say counseling helps you, but when you've been abused and raped mentally, physically, it's just always in you, and it's always tough to talk about. For me, I have kids by him. I have 2 children by him. And so it's he'll call me and I have to be nice. Finally, I got the strength to cuss him out now because I'm not with him, but I still have to deal with it. You know what I mean? Like I have one daughter that won't talk to him at all. And then I have another daughter. She talks to him, and so he has my one daughter and my granddaughter, and I don't communicate a lot with them because I just don't want to be bothered with him. It's just, the scars are way too deep for me.
What's crazy is like a lot of times these domestic violence situations, the men, or it could be a woman too, we're going to get into that as well. They start off so nice. They're so unassuming. It's like somebody could be in a community, but when they get behind them closed doors, they become a totally different person.
Yeah.
Was that the case with you, Tara?
Yeah, my ex-husband was in the military, and he used to beat me up about cooking noodles, and for him, I was the biggest whore, and I wasn't doing nothing. But of course, he would beat me up. It was so bad that I used the bathroom on myself. You know what I mean? Like I was scared running around like this. And I remember my father and my brother coming to Virginia telling me to leave. I said, why? My daddy said, I'm gonna kill him. And I'm like, me being used to being abused and me thinking, I got these kids, what am I gonna do? I'm a military wife. Daddy, don't do that. No, I don't want you to do that. My daddy said, you don't want me to do it? I said, no, because in my mind, I was thinking, what was I gonna do if you kill him? You know what I mean? Daddy was like, we're gonna throw him in the Norfolk water. You know what I'm saying?
But,
that happens a lot too. I mean, like, so the sometimes the family wants to get involved, but sometimes the person who's being abused, they don't, I'm not gonna say they don't want the help, but they act like they don't want to leave the person. It's hard sometimes to leave your abuser because you always hear, girl, why don't you just leave? It's not as easy as it looks, right?
It's not easy at all. People tell you to leave, just pack your stuff and leave. You've been conditioned to feel a certain way. When somebody's hurting you, like you'll try to do things to keep them from being mad at you. You try to be Miss Perfect. You start accepting things that you wouldn't normally accept to keep that person from going upside your head. You know what I mean? It becomes, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to say this. I'm going to be this person for you, and people just leave. It's not easy to leave at all. It is just not.
I'm trying to refrain from violence. You know what I'm saying? I really do. You know what I mean? But if somebody was going after my sister, you know what I mean? I'm going to fuck them up. I'm just going to keep it real. You know what I mean? So, because, I'm just that, I'm just like that. I remember the dude hit my sister when I was a kid, smacked the shit out of her. You know what I mean? And I picked up a shovel and busted him in the head with the shovel. You know what I mean? Because I'm not going to let you hit my sister. You know what I mean? So, sometimes, the men need to be chastised when you're hitting on a woman. That's just my point of view. You just can't be hitting on a woman without being chastised. You know what I mean? That's just my point of view.
It makes
Donny, when my when my father left my mother, he said he was going to leave her when I graduated, and he did. Mm-hmm. When my dad left my mother put me out. I had nowhere to go. Mm-hmm. So when I got married, I was like, okay, I'm never going to have to be at the green box hoping somebody will give me a hotel room or hoping one of my friends will let me sneak through their window or whatever. So when I got married and he was in the military, I always had a place to go. So my fear was I might be homeless or I might not be able to take care of myself. I was young. You know what I mean? Like if I was the person that I am today, it would have been totally different. But I was a young girl. I was 17, 18 years old.
Yeah. Wow. So a lot of reasons why. Well, go ahead, Kevin. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say that your story sounds so similar to what happened to Aretha Franklin. There's a lot of, innuendos out there about what she experienced as a young girl, because she had her first child about 13, 14, and then was married by 18 years old to someone, her husband and manager, who ended up beating her savagely for about a decade. But I do believe it's because she thought that was a safe space that she could go to, just like what Ms. Thomas said. And if I could just focus on men for a second, I mean, again, it's not like most of us, whether we have fathers or not, very few of us have fathers who are actually, even if they're in the household, emotionally available. What I mean by that, we actually talk about it and break down what a man is. A lot of times I'll do these workshops on manhood, masculinity, and men will say, well, a man is responsible, takes care of their family, provides. They say that stuff. Then I say, okay, after everything you just said, you just described my mother. Now, can you actually tell me what a man is? There's usually silence because people can't answer the question. It's always the same kind of working definitions. And so I think that's the first problem. And then if we're talking about Black men, one of my good friends out of Atlanta, out of ATL, named Ed Garnes, who's getting his PhD on Black men and Black mental health, always talks about how Black men feel like there's a certain kind of target on us. I want to make it very clear. I think that Black men and Black women are oppressed equally. I'm talking about heterosexual folks for a second, but differently, And I think that a lot of Black men don't understand that when we will say, well, racism does X, Y, to Z to us, but then we turn around and do what Jordan L. Hurston talked about in Their Eyes Were Watching God. We treat women like the muse of the earth, like they're nothing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so part of our masculinity, we don't even realize that our manhood is really a bootleg definition of white manhood, the oppressive white manhood that has dominated us all these years. And we end up taking that on Black women, on the LGBTQ community, the killing of Black trans women. You can go down a list of stuff that Black men who are straight, heterosexual have done because of this twisted notion of what manhood is. And I understand where you're coming from, Donny. I was raised to fight. But we were called all kinds of derogatory terms if we didn't fight. Mm-hmm. Even that's problematic when you think about it getting older. Calling boys all kinds of names, some of the words were sexist, some of it were homophobic. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Yeah, right. But that actually puts us in a box. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And so imagine Ms. Thomas's husband, he's a military man, which is supposed to be outside of athletes. A military man is supposed to be like this man, you know what I'm saying? But what was going inside of him before he even got to the military? What was going inside of him inside the military that would lead him to go off on his wife? And so I've had to think about that in every single relationship. What is going on inside of me, where whatever's happening out there, I'm now taking it out on the sister that I may be with. You feel what I'm saying? And I think we got to think about that, And we got to take a hard look in the mirror. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead. I'm loving your points. I'm gonna go because you bring it up and you did mention. So you've been very transparent. I appreciate you being transparent about your past and that you actually have been physical with a woman that you've apologized to, and it happened years ago. But you talk about your background. You don't know what people are going through. But I also think that when that happens, of course, other men have to step up. We'll get to that in just a second. But I want to ask you this question because when Chris Brown went through what he went through with Rihanna, a lot of people threw him away. Obviously, people are upset, and they should have been upset because you should never put your hands on a woman, period, in a physical way. But there are people out there who feel like if you do it, especially 18, 19 years old, hey, you know what, girl? You're going to do it again. Don't trust him. Once he starts, it's like a cheater. If he cheated once, he's going to cheat again. He's physical with you once, he's going to do it again. How do you guys feel about somebody actually making that transition? You did it, Kevin. How do other people do it? Other men?
I mean, it's a process because you're taught one way your entire life. So it's not like you all of a sudden, it's just like, the first 18 years of my life, I knew nothing about Black history. It's not like I can erase the first 18 years of ignorance. The rest of my life is spent figuring out how to love myself as a Black person. The same thing with masculinity, with manhood. It's like, okay, if you've been taught that this is what a man is, this is what boys do. Boys don't cry, boys don't talk about certain things, you suppress stuff. Boys fight, boys play sport, all this stuff. I mean, that's all I did. You know what I'm saying? And then you got to relearn that. And so therapy, years and years of counseling, spiritual work, realizing that I know nothing about half the country's population that are identified as women and girls, or half the world's population. I mean, how did I go to college for 4 years and I don't read anything but Zora Neale Hurston, no Nikki Giovanni, no Angela Davis, no Bell Hooks? We can go through the list of all these, nothing.
Women, right.
I mean, which means that even as my mother and my aunts were talking about they were dealing with as Black women in the kitchen, it was going in one ear and out the other ear. You feel what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And then what we'll say is, well, I'll never let anyone do that to my mother or my grandmother or my sister. But then we go outside the house and treat women in the community the same way. And I don't even think we should say anymore that we should look at every woman as our mother or our sister. I think we should look at every woman and girl as a human being, period, as our equals. That's the real issue. We don't view women and girls as our equals, which they are. And so that's something that I've had to grapple with, my entire life since 1991, when that incident happened. I took ownership for it. I wrote an essay in Ethics magazine called The Sexist in Me. I've written a lot of stuff about it, but I still fall short. I still fall short in different ways that I've had to think about. Even with this divorce, I've had to sit here in the pandemic by myself. Kevin, what did you do right and what did you do wrong? Because I think part of being a man is being as self-reflective as Miss Thomas has been as a woman. Like, this is the stuff that I've been through. I'm not going to allow this to happen again. And this is how I change it. And are there examples of it? Yeah. Read the autobiography of Malcolm X. Malcolm X talks about how he hit women before he went to prison. It's in the book.
Right.
But what Malcolm had was an organization, an infrastructure called the Nation of Islam that helped him to transform his life into a different kind of person. Chris Brown didn't have that. A lot of us didn't have that. What I had back in 1991 was a whole bunch of women, sisters actually, who stepped to me and said, hey, Kev, we know you're an activist. You talk all this racial stuff, but you cannot engage this kind of behavior. So there was actually a support system for me. And so I think, we do want to redeem people. We do want to have restorative justice, but it's got to be something there that's going to say, this is the path that you need to go on, because this path over here is about death and you need to be about life. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen for a lot of us.
Tara, can men change? Can they change, in your opinion?
No, I think
I respect that.
And I think it comes from me having a trust issues, you know what I mean? Because I've been hurt and I've had conversations with him over the years, and, he has apologized to me, but I still see certain things, even in the conversations, the dominance in the conversations, or like when he wants to communicate with my daughter that doesn't speak to him, he says things, oh, she'll need me. And I say, well, no, she don't. She's okay. She got me, oh, no, she'll need me. So it's certain things that he says that I don't believe that he'll change.
I mean, look at it like that. I know we got to take a break and say, but my mother is in her late 70s. She still talks about my father and he's dead. She still feels that hurt. And it's been 40 years since that all happened. And this is what we as Black men need to understand. This is what I think about now more than ever. Even if I'm single, can I make sure that I do not hurt Black woman after Black woman? Period.
Yeah. A lot of trauma that's involved, a lot of counseling needs to go around on both ends as well. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about how, it's not just women who are being abused, but men and get abused as well when it comes to domestic violence. We got to get into that as well. And it's not just physical. We'll do that next on the Mike and Donny Show on Fox O. Back on the Mike and Donny Show on Fox O, we're talking domestic violence and toxic masculinity with author Kevin Powell and domestic violence survivor and publicist Tara Thomas. And we were talking before the break about the role of a man, Donny. You was talking about what somebody did to your sister and what you did to him. We see a lot of Black women who get up in a man's face, their friends, when it happens to their friends or whatever, and they'll be the first who wants to fight another man. We don't see enough men basically stepping in and intervening when something goes down between a man and a woman, in my opinion. I know it happens. You did it, Donny. But what I saw, like, for example, Vado and Tahiri, you know who those people are? They're on marriage boot camp. Vado got up, said he didn't choke her, but he got in her face and he put his hands on her. And what I didn't see, I did not see another man on that set, another Black man on that set jumping up and making sure that sister was fine. That fucking pissed me off.
But look, a lot of women that get abused like me, I turn up now. So I'm surprised.
No, I mean, that's fine. You can, and you should fight back. Hopefully you will fight back. What I'm saying is there are other people that should be there by your side to let you know that you're not alone.
Yeah. That's true.
That's very wrong for Vado to do that. Like, come on, man. You know, I done got the shit slapped out of me before and walked away. You know what I mean? Because you know, sometimes you gotta do. As kids, we are taught. I mean, as men, we're taught. Oh, you know, we can take the abuse. You know what I mean? That's what we are taught. You know what I mean? Like, oh, she can't hurt you. Why'd you do that? You know what I mean? But sometimes women can hurt you now. You know what I mean?
But that's good men, because my son, I tell them girls, if you slap him, he's going to slap your ass back.
Wow.
Not slap Fatty. Now I told him, you know, I tell him that that's not right. But there one girl called me and she said he snatched me out the bed at 3 o'clock in the morning by my hair.
Ooh.
I called Fatty and I said, "Did you snatch that girl by her hair?" He said, "No, ma'am, mama, no, I didn't." Right? And my son's a recovering alcoholic. So I said, I know that he did it. And I say, Fatty, you know you don't want nobody doing that kind of stuff to me. So you can't do that. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, queen. I didn't do it. When I know my son did that. You know what I mean? Like,
you think he was affected by what he saw growing up? Like we were just talking about?
He absolutely was. My son doesn't even date Black women. And he tells me, he say, "Mom, I don't want to date you because I'm a fighter now." Like, he tells me that my tongue is way too strong now. But I tell him I do that because I have to protect me. You know what I'm saying? And I think he's abusive, and I think that he did get that from his stepfather. I absolutely think so.
So you mean Fatty snatched a white woman's head like that?
Yeah, and he in Kentucky. Shit.
Yeah, well,
I just
don't put your hands on any woman at all.
No.
Talking about it, you know, like he was saying that she hit him first, and then you know, a lot of times, like Kevin was talking about, we get into that role like if we're afraid. Part of the toxic masculinity, I believe, is afraid. Like if a woman is abusing you in any kind of way or whatnot, man, don't say anything because you ain't really a man. If a woman is abusing you, you know what I mean? You look soft. If you're gonna let that woman beat you up, you're gonna call the police. We 1 in 7 men in this country are victims of domestic violence in a physical way as well. So we got to understand that too, Kevin.
I agree. But I think that I mean, of course, there's examples. I have a friend who talked about how her father got stabbed by her mother while he was sleeping. I mean, it definitely happens. I think but I don't want to shift the conversation from the fact that 1 out of 4 women in this country, 1 out of 3 on the planet, over 1 billion women will be victims of some sort of sexual violence in their lifetime. That's a pandemic. That's been a pandemic.
Absolutely.
For a long time. But women don't talk about it.
Say it again.
Women don't talk about it.
Why not? Why not, Charles?
Enough people don't talk about men and women. A lot of you're hearing all these cases right now, but a lot of these cases go unreported. So I don't get the stats. So
they don't talk about rape. They're afraid of how they will be looked at. They're afraid, like me, when he raped me, and they saw the semen coming out of my rectum, in the blood. They knew. They kept saying, "What happened? What happened?" And I'm like, nothing. You know, because I was afraid to tell, but they knew. I remember the lady shut the door and she said, "Listen, all you have to do is say something." I just cried. I couldn't say anything. I just looked and said, I want to go home.
I mean, what Ms. Thomas is describing, I mean, the traumas that we deal with in this world is profound. And it you know, it's like, I mean, how can I sit here and say, look, I'm raised by a single mother, that, you know, poverty, the violence and abuse that I saw all around me, the abandoned by my father. By the time I'm 8 or 9 years old, I've already got multiple levels of trauma happening. You know what I'm saying? And so it doesn't matter if you're a straight A student or you're good at sports or good academically or both. You know, you're going to have some issues by the time you're an adult and trying to be in relationships, trying to figure out whatever your identity or identities are. And I think until we start to unpack this stuff, because what she just described, I mean, you know, because of what I went through in the early 90s, I started doing work with both men and women. And I can't tell you how many calls I've gotten from men saying I need help because I just did X, Y, and Z to a woman, or women who are survivors of some form of violence or abuse. And it's we don't talk about this stuff. You know, there's a shame in the Black community, which I do think goes all the way back to slavery. I really believe that, you know what I'm saying? Because we weren't allowed to talk about certain things. We had to keep certain things to ourselves. And I think that it does us great harm. And for me, as I'm listening, you know, at the end of the day, do we even know, many of us, not all of us, but do most of us even know what a healthy relationship can actually look like? You know what I'm saying? Be it a friendship or a partnership or a loving relationship. Even today, I had to check someone I was doing business with. I said, look, you know, I don't know how you relate to other people, but this yelling and screaming stuff and dissing people, that's not going down here, you know, because that's not the environment that we're going to have here, where people are disrespectful to each other. But I also come from a family where it was normal for us to curse each other out. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? And it's so, like, you know, or the names that I was called as a child. And it, you know, we all end up having damaged self-esteem, and it's like becomes what Malcolm X called this very vicious cycle that we get stuck in, because it's all trauma. And so we got to unpack the trauma, and we got to make a conscious decision. You know, I want to be in a healthy relationship, and this is what it's going to look like. And here's the work that I'm willing to do, and I'm willing to take ownership for the stuff that I'm bringing to the table. If two people are not willing to take ownership for it, it's not going to work. They're stuck. But you can't be working on your stuff and someone else's stuff. You both have to be willing to unpack stuff so you can move forward together. That's the way it's going. Otherwise you're in a dysfunctional relationship.
Hey,
it's not healthy, and you're miserable.
I keep hearing you talk, man. Like, you know, you talking about as a kid, you know, you was traumatized, and you know, I was too. You know, I mean, all your mama cussing, and you know, and you know, saying, "Oh, nigga, get your ass over here." Whoa, whoa, whoa. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? And then we sit around here and we think we supposed to know how to talk to a woman when your mama cussing you out 24/7 and beat you with stitching cords, you know, and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? So I think we as kids, we grow up being traumatized, and then we think we know how to treat a woman. But you know, I love my mom to death. You know, my mom ain't snitching on you, but at the end of the day, you know, sometimes our mothers probably didn't know how to raise. Because my mother had kids at an early age, at 15. So, you know, when you're having kids young, man, you know, sometimes you don't know how to raise these kids, and then they putting trauma on us sometimes, and they don't know it, and we don't know it until we get older.
See, y'all hear what y'all saying with the trauma and how it's built up as a kid, and we grow with that. And you talked about trying to unpack that trauma. And for me, I wasn't able to do it until I was 47 years old when I wrote the book and realized I actually had that trauma that was packed inside of me for so many years that I had suppressed. And the reason I suppressed it was because, hey, I'm Black. This is what I deal with. This is my life, whatever. Too many of us don't realize we have that trauma inside of us just being Black in this country. Dealing with racism, dealing with everything that we deal with in this country. We got trauma we need to suppress, we need to let go of and unpack and talk to somebody about. But another issue that we have is that we don't want to talk to somebody outside of our family member or our pastor because we won't go to therapy.
But sometimes, like, we don't suppress it. We go out there and be violent.
Yeah, you know you do it in other ways.
I was one of those people. I was out there being violent, you know what I'm saying, doing things at an early age, not to women, to men, you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, man, you know, so sometimes we let it out in different type of ways, man. That's why I don't believe in whipping kids. Because me getting whipped with stitching cords, and no, I'm just saying, Tarver, I'm just saying, as far as me getting whipped with stitching cords and switches and all like that, it made me very, very violent as a young man. You know what I'm saying? Right. So that's why I don't believe.
Same here.
You know what made me change? The penitentiary made me change.
You was in the pen?
How'd you go to the pen?
The penitentiary. And that made me take a long look at me because I shot somebody. So that made me take a look at me. Was it an abuser? He hit one of my children. And so, but let me tell you, I was at the club when he was with my kids. I should have been at home with my kids, and I was in the club kicking it. And so I shot him. They gave me 15 years. Damn. You know how they tell you you're entitled to your first felony probation? That is not true, because I didn't do drugs or any of that shit. So that's a lie. And me thinking, my parents got money, I'm gonna be all right. I had a public defender. Okay. And so when I went to the penitentiary, I was 1 month pregnant. So I had a baby in the penitentiary.
Wow.
So life for me as I knew it, it changed. That's what made me start doing checks on myself. When I got out of prison, I was going to therapy because I kept picking the same man. So I went from I'm really introverted now, and I deal with celebrities and people all day. But when I'm done, I go sit down. You know what I mean? Like, because I'm very careful. I'm really careful about the people that I put in my life. And I'm very, very careful about the things that I do, because I tell people, you think only people that do drugs or that come from broken homes and all of that, people think that those are the only people that go to prison. It's not true.
That's powerful. I mean, something as Thomas just said, it's like, and I've had to look in the mirror myself, y'all. It's like who you have around you is a reflection at that time, how you feel about yourself. It's a cliche, but it's mad real like that, you know? And so who are your friends? Who's your intimate partner? Who Who are you doing business with? You know, and I'd be sitting here lying. I'd be lying to you if I said that in my entire, I battled low self-esteem most of my life. People are like, well, Kevin Powell, how could you got 14 books? You do all this stuff around the country. It doesn't matter because here's, you know, it's like that Smokey Robinson song. You got this mask going on, but underneath that, all these tears. I mean, when Brother Harrell was talking about I got beatings when I was awake. I got beatings when I was asleep. You know, I therapy is what helped me to forgive my mother and my father, you know, because I realized both of them were wounded. You feel what I'm saying? And but at the same time, I still have to be conscious of who I bring into my life as friends. Are they trying to be healthy? You know, who I'm in an intimate relationship with, are they trying to be healthy? You know, can I have, because I think that, you know, what you said, Brother Harrell, that was me. You just act out, you know, and that's not saying everyone does it, but we act out in different ways. Some people might be violent. Some people might be a lot of irresponsible sex. Some people might be weed, drugs, alcohol, addiction to video games. I got, you know, I'm a massive sports fan. That's why I know who you are, Brother Hill. You know what I'm saying? You're one of my people I watch, you know, but at the same time, even we hide behind that, like, you know, because anything not to deal with our stuff. I'm gonna leave you with this. Michael Bennett, who just retired from the National Football League. I did an amazing conversation with him, like this amazing conversation a couple of years ago. You know, this brother got a Super Bowl ring with the Seahawks a few years back. This man, 6'5", 300-pound football player, stood up there, sat there and cried and talked openly and honestly about what it was to be a black man in America. And it blew my mind. I said, how did this? And his father was in the military. He had all the things that you would lead you to think that he's going to be a toxic man. But here he is talking lovingly about his wife and his daughters and about being a farmer and all this and intellectual stuff. Like, he made a conscious decision, which is what I think we all are getting at. How can you break from what we've been given to be someone different? And that I mean, shout out to Michael Bennett. I just, that's what it is. So I do see examples out there, and he's one of them. I think it's incredible what people like him are doing. And he comes from this very as you know, Brother Hill, this hyper masculine sport called football. But he's a different kind of man. You know what I'm saying?
He and his brother, both different kind of men.
Let me say this, and that's why I try not to judge people, Kevin, because you know you don't never know what people are going through, man. And I can sit here and tell you some stories would blow your mind, but I'm just not. You know what I'm saying? Of my family, you know what I mean? But sometimes you don't know where people been. You know what I mean? You don't. Right. Because I would never thought that Tara would bust on somebody. I you know what I mean? Like I just think like, oh, Tara been through the penitentiary, so you can't judge people because you don't know their story and where they come from, man. You know, we have to stop that. You know what I mean? Real talk.
Yeah. It's important for us to tell our stories. We need to advance as a people, man. We'll do that. We're going to talk about abuse not just being physical, it's also mental, which a lot of times can be just as impactful and harmful. And how come we don't get the police involved sometimes? We need to get into that. It's coming up next on Fox. So I was about to say Fox Sports, Fox Soul. The effects of domestic violence and toxic masculinity in the United States when it comes to Black people on the Mike and Donny show, talking to Tara Thomas and Kevin Powell. Let me get to some viewer comments real quick. RJ Renee says we need to start with songs called Sisters, BS, HS, and Thoughts. When you can oppress someone by degrading them, it's nothing to be violent with them. They're nothing. And then RJ Renee also says, or is it RJ Renee? No, Help Me 100 says, I dealt with verbal abuse from a Black man once COVID started. I'm speaking about it in therapy. We was talking about therapy, but was also saying that it's not just physical. When my mom stopped getting beaten by my dad, when I pulled a gun on him, it's in the book, it went to mental type of abuse, you know, talking, threats, those types of things. Because once they start physically, the mental abuse, that's when you really get scared. If I tell you, you leave me, you're going to die. I'm going to kill you. Little words here and there. That is also abuse that doesn't get enough, I guess, notoriety or talked about enough.
Yeah, and we can't sit up here and play like we goody two-shoe, because if you call a woman a bitch, you know what I mean, you being abusive. You know what I'm saying? And if a woman call you a punk ass, hoe ass nigga, you know what I mean, they're being abusive. So you know, we have to sit around here and look ourselves in the mirror and see how we talk to women and how women talk to us. You know what I'm saying? So, and we got to stop all that. Real talk.
Wow.
How do we get past that though? I'm like, you know, once again, it's a lot of it's just ingrained. It's just, you know, the way you thought, the way you were supposed to be raised, how you're supposed to act or whatever, whatnot. We talked about therapy, whatever. Give me some other ways, Kev, about how we can get past that. Tara, of course, you know, you talk about you're an advocate now. How do we get past it? How do we move past this? Because we have to stop it.
For me, I think that when you have a partner, a boyfriend, spouse, when it becomes mentally abusive, you guys can have code words that things are going to escalate.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have a code word and be like, because in a minute, I'm getting ready to ask you who you talking to. So if we have code words, then we know we got to tone it down a little bit. I think knowing the man, the woman, the person that you're with and discussing, like I have scars. So for me, let's not do that. So let's talk about how we can not go to the other side, because I might go there really quick.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about having an understanding and understanding yourself. You know what I mean? Like, man, I know that I shouldn't be like that. I know that I'm an alpha, so sometimes I know I got to sit down and be like, okay, you know, even in my mind, I'm saying this shit get on my nerves, you know. But you have to know what's good for you and what's not good for you. And you got to go through some shit to really understand what's good for you. I mean, you do.
And like I just said, so we got to watch how we talk to people. You know what I'm saying? Because like you just said, who you think you're talking to? You know what I mean? Right. I was just talking to a young lady the other day. She said something slick out of my mouth. I'm like, who you think you're talking to? Because see, I don't play those games. I don't call no man no bitch. And I don't, you know what I mean? I try to be respectful at all time. But we really have to watch how we talk to each other, because that can be get really abusive, you know what I mean? Mental abuse, you know what I'm saying? So we really have to watch our tone, how we talk to women and men.
And your tone.
Right.
Please, can somebody talk to my fiance about that? Hey, like she said, don't worry about how I'm saying. Listen to the words. I can't hear the words coming out your mouth because your tone is bad. You're coming at me the wrong way. I'm not listening. You like Charlie Brown grandma. Want. I don't hear nothing you saying, because you need to worry about the tone right now. Just don't come at me the wrong way. I'm sorry. I let a little.
What do you feel about them tones, Kev? Because you know when tones come out as men, you know we don't even hear you after the tone.
Yeah.
If a man having some type of beef, like, man, who you think you talking to? You know what I mean? How you feel about that, Kev?
I mean, let me say this. The only human being, no matter how they identify themselves, at this stage of my life that can curse at me, curse me out, diss me, disrespect me, because she ain't gonna change, is my mama. Mm-hmm. That's the only person, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll block my mama. I have done it and I will do it again.
You know what's funny about that, Mr. Hill? Because during this pandemic, my mama was talking about, boy, you ain't gonna tell me what I'm gonna do. I ain't wearing nobody's mask. It was going off me. I'm trying to help her and protect her, and telling me that I didn't believe in God. I had no faith. I said, Mom, me and you gonna do a timeout. I'm not gonna talk to you for a couple of days, because you need a break and I need a break, because this ain't gonna work. And we cool now, because I also realized during this 4 or 5 months of this pandemic, Kev, your mother is who she is. You're gonna have to shift how you relate to her. You know what I mean? I was the other day. And that's an exercise, because, you know, you're also talking about someone like what Brother Harrell just said. I mean, this is a person who said all kinds of stuff to me, who beat me when I was growing up, and I've had to do a lot of forgiving. And what Ms. Thomas was talking about, that we haven't thrown that word, the triggers. These are certain things trigger you. I ain't gonna lie to you, my mother's tone still makes me feel like I'm that 7-8-year-old boy. You know what I mean? Who ain't no good like my daddy ain't no good. Does that make sense, y'all?
Yeah,
and so and I have to fight through that, because if I'm gonna be in a healthy relationship, and I do want to get married again, I want to be married for the rest of my life the next time, I want to make sure, hey, Kev, when those things come up, they're not going to trigger you to the point where you go backwards. Does that make sense, y'all?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Please speak on that.
And you know what, Kev? I always say this. You know, when my mom was 80 years old, and I'm like, I'm gonna check on my mother. You know when I know she's okay? When she talking shit. You know? You're okay, Mom.
Hey,
that's a good point. Good segue. How do we know when people? Because a lot of times people abuse and we won't even know it. They walk around. They don't have the abuse. They know how to hide the black eyes. And your friends won't even know that they're being abused in any kind of way. Are there any signs that we're going to look out for?
There's a lot of signs.
There's a lot of signs.
Teach us, Tora, what's the signs?
You know, when a couple talking and she looking scared, you can tell that body language. And you can tell sometimes with men when there's just like, what did I say? And she's looking like, okay, baby, like shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? Like, you can't tell me shut the fuck up. But I watch people and I'm around people and I be like, she can her ass whoop. Girl, are you okay? You need a ride home? You know, right. I be like, you know, I got that thing in the purse. You know,
you still got it?
Right. I was like, yeah, you know, my probation's over. I'm good. You know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna worry about that.
Tora, I feel sorry for your husband.
Yeah, my parole is over. I'm probation. Okay.
All right, she ain't taking no shit. Hey, you know what? I gotta take one more break because I want to continue this conversation on the other side. We'll be back, wrap things up with Tara Thomas and Kevin Powell on the other side. Back on the Mike and Donny show on Fox. So we were talking to Tara Thomas, domestic violence survivor, and Kevin Powell. And Tara, I gotta say, you know, you're a survivor, but you're also a fighter. I mean, and I applaud you for that because you've been able to turn being a victim around into something that is fierce and also an advocate for other women out there to fight as well. And I love that.
Oh, yeah. I will. If they need some help, all they got to do is call me. Right here.
We appreciate you telling your story. She was just telling us something about her daughter. Can you tell that story real quick on the air?
Yes. So my daughter was living at this apartment complex, and her and the leasing agent got into it, right? And my daughter said, "I got something for you. I'm gonna call my mama." Mind you, I used to be a property manager, so all the property managers knew each other, right? They had my daughter arrested for terroristic threatening. Right? All she said was, "I'm going to get my mom."
They know you down at the precinct, Tara. But here's the thing. The segue is this, because a lot of times, one of the things I wrote about in my book, I noticed when I was writing about the domestic violence that my mom went through, I don't remember one time the police showing up at our house. Not one time. Out of all them ass whippings my mom got, I don't remember one time the police showing up at the house. And I don't know why. I don't know if it was in the black neighborhood or whatever, but I also know sometimes in the black neighborhood, abusers are more afraid of the police and what they might do than the man that's actually in the house that's abusing them.
Well, it was taboo. It was taboo, Mike, in the black community when we was growing up. It really called the police. That's what I feel. You know, because I know it wasn't in my neighborhood and where I grew up, and all my crazy ass uncles and aunties. It was taboo to call the police.
Yeah.
Well, the police
the wrong way. I mean, look, I know they're supposed to serve and protect. I know we got some issues with the police and whatnot, but it's like, you know, how do you what's the balance there? Talk to me. Somebody tell me what the balance is.
There's no balance. I think that black women's lives are just not valued at all. Even when we look at the situation with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, I've been at a lot of rallies. I was just at one march on Saturday. We'll say Breonna Taylor's name, but you still will have more support for the George Floyds, the Trayvon Martins than you will for the Sandra Blands, the Breonna Taylors, because here's black women's lives and here's black women's lives. You know what I'm saying? Even the fact that the cops were arrested in Minnesota around George Floyd, they still have not been arrested for the cops that killed Breonna Taylor. And so I think that's part of the issue. So black women are dealing with racism and sexism, as Ms. Thomas knows better than any of us. And so they're dealing with double oppression. And then, of course, you know, there's the challenge. Even when black women have been beaten, there's still awareness that if I call the police, something might happen to this black male, which puts it like, and you know, what I say now is that you got to protect your life no matter what. Your life is more valuable than anybody else's life. You can't put someone else's life ahead of yours, you know.
If black women call the police now and you get on the phone and you say, "He's beating my ass and I'm going to send him out of here in a body bag," they're coming.
Yeah. Right.
They're coming. You know, it used to be before, "Oh my God, he's hurting me, he's beating me." They're going to take their time. But if you tell them, "Listen, I'm calling you, I'm asking for help," you don't show up, you might as well send a coroner, like, because this going down. They're going to come and they're going to take it more serious. So if you call the police because you're getting beat up and you have a tone and you say, "Listen, this is what's," and you crying, but you're saying, "This is what's happening," and I'm going to snap. It's just a way that people kind of put women into a bag, or they put them into, you know what I mean? It's not fair. They treat us so unfairly.
I agree.
It's a bigger story, and you know, look, you definitely should call the police, get the abuser out of your home or whatever, do what you got to do. I agree with that. But in this day and time, this day and age, when you call the police, sometimes you get the wrong cop that comes there. Sometimes that is a license or an excuse to do something that bad cop wants to do in that home. You know what I'm saying? So I know there's that when I talked about the balance, that's the fine balance. It's like you got to call the cops, but you pray that the right cop comes to assess the situation. So when we talk about defunding the police, maybe that's part of it as well. When talking about not just the cops, but also somebody that is a domestic violence specialist that shows up with the cop as well. Right. Maybe that needs to be part of the solution.
If I could just say this to men out there, you know, you are accountable for we are accountable for our behavior. You know, counseling or therapy doesn't just mean going to a therapist. Not everybody can afford a therapist, but it also means, hey, are there some men in your life, especially older men who've been through some stuff that you can just download to, that you can vent to, so you don't turn to violence in any form against another man, against a woman, against anybody of any gender identity, straight, queer, transgender, anybody. Violence should not be the solution for all conflicts or any problems that you have. I think number two, are you taking ownership for your behavior? We're talking about earlier, at a certain point, I can't just say, well, my mama was this, my father wasn't there, I grew up poor. I got to start to take responsibility for my life at this point. You feel what I'm saying? Yep. I can't control what happened in the past, but what I can control is what's going forward. What I do going forward, I got to be if my father wasn't there, well, I got to be the man and the father that I wish he would have been, period. You feel what I'm saying? And I think, again, women and girls are our equals, and we need to respect them as our equals. Not only do we need to be reading autobiography of Malcolm X, we need to be reading Maya Angelou's autobiographies as well. We got to understand, sisters in our communities. And when I hear sisters say, I don't feel protected, I don't feel loved by Black women, by Black men, which is all over social media right now. Go to Instagram, it's all over there. Sisters ain't just saying this to be saying this, they're saying this for a reason. You know what I'm saying? And we have a responsibility to listen, just like we as Black men want white folks to listen to us about racism, then how are we going to turn around and not listen to Black women about sexism, about how we treat them?
We have to learn how to love ourselves too, though.
I agree.
You know what I love? I would love for all of us to come back again and have a dialogue with some Instagram models and Tara and Kevin, so we can just no, this is real though, Kev. I want to have a big dialogue so we can find out, so we can learn how to treat our women. They can teach us something, you know what I mean? Because obviously we're not doing something right, and we got to learn what to do. You feel me?
I feel you. I respect it.
The main thing is education, learning, and we can solve a lot of problems in this country and around the world. We continue to educate ourselves. We appreciate your thoughts, your education, your wisdom. Kevin, appreciate that. Tara, thank you for being so brave and coming on. I know it's tough for you to retell those stories and whatnot, but thank you for being such an advocate. And Kevin, always a big fan of yours, my brother.
I forgot to mention my 14th book is out, When We Free the World, on Apple Books. I completely forgot.
I'm gonna order your book.
There you go.
Get that, Kev.
Conversation was so good, I forgot about the book.
We appreciate it, man. We'll definitely go out there and support that. Thank you so much for hanging out with us here on the Mike and Donny Show tonight.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.